Okay, this is the GitLab-com-infrastructure planning meeting. We're going to discuss the future of the GitLab-com-infrastructure project and also how it relates to the repeatable database provisioning work that's ongoing, which has a separate project where we run Terraform and we also run Ansible. And the reason I call this meeting is because before I start using a data source for the DB provisioning project to import data from our other Terraform state, the primary Terraform state. For example, I want to deploy into the staging VPC. In order to do that, I need to use a data source to get that data from GitLab-com infrastructure because we're now like in two projects. And this is the first time that we've had a second project that will deploy into GitLab staging and GitLab production. So I thought it'd be good to talk about this a bit to see whether that's a good idea. And if it isn't a good idea, I think there are a lot of merits to having a monorepo for Terraform and possibly a monorepo for Terraform and Ansible. So maybe we can discuss what it would look like to get, to move the Ansible stuff into the GitLab-com infrastructure project. I put some notes here about what I just discussed, and I also, number two, I just proposed the scope of what we're talking about. And I think we don't have to do all of this now, although it would be nice maybe to consider some of the other items that, go beyond just moving the DB provisioning stuff into GitLab-com infrastructure. For example, I would really like to move the project itself under the GL infra group. I also would really love to set up the ops mirror, but these are two things that we could do later and we don't need to do now. I guess on the scope, I just wanted to kind of go through these one by one. I think for 2A, everyone probably agrees that that's a good thing for us to do eventually. Like there's no controversy there. And I think we could probably, can anyone think of a reason why we couldn't just do that now? And move it on ops, not on, like we would just move it to a new location on ops.
Does anything pull that project in?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have any
nice
registry. I don't think we have any registry images there either.
Yeah, that makes it really easy. I definitely think we should do it then.
Okay, so that could be like an easy thing to do, at least on ops. And then for 2B, this I would love to do as well. And we did it, I did this for Chef Repo and it wasn't that big of a deal. But the one difference here is that GitLab-com infrastructure uses changes. And we all know that when you use changes on a mirror, it's just a big problem because whenever you create a branch, it can't determine what the changes are when you use branch pipelines. So really changes becomes useless. And that's like a big disadvantage. Does anyone have any ideas for how to overcome that?
Maybe what we can try and do, and this is just a half-baked idea I just thought of right now, is when we trigger a pipeline on the mirror, we use variables, and then we can try and mimic the changes with the variables. Like these are the files that changed with CI/CD variables, and maybe we can try and mimic that. But again, this is just a half-baked idea I just thought of right now, so I'm not sure.
Do you know, Steve, whether when we merge to, like, I know when we initially create the branch, you can't determine what changes. But I think that's generally okay because the only thing we're doing there is that we're looking at plans. It's when we merge to master, this is where like the changes become really important because this is where we're actually applying them. When you merge to master, do we also have the same problem? Or is it only when you initially create the branch?
I think it's only when you initially create the branch because on master, we do know the, if we use the merge commit, we know the parent cha, so we can, Ruby can do the diff there. We can find the diff, but I think confirming that through a small project might be best. But as far as I know, master, we know the diff on master because we have the merge commit.
similarly related to variables, there's a way we can do dynamic pipelines. Could we even have a job that like does just a manual git diff between master and the current commit and finds the files that are changed between master and the current commit, and then creates a dynamic child pipeline based off that? I mean, it's hairy. It's basically like we're recreating the changes functionality in a bash script ourselves. But like, I mean, I know you've seen it, Jarv. There's that issue open about this whole problem that Craig Furman raised like months ago, and we never got good traction on it. I really feel like this is something the product should handle better, but for this particular
I was going to
case,
say exactly the same thing. Like we just building this like contraption, you know, and we've got Woodhouse, and we just keep adding onto it. And like my personal experience with it is that like it can be pretty rough around the edges, and you know, if you just want to do something, sometimes it's like a lot of extra overhead. And you know, I've been around a long time. I know what's going on. It must be 10 times worse for new employees, and you know, people from outside the infrastructure department who are trying to contribute. And I agree. Like maybe we should be trying to, and this is kind of not something we would block on, but we should be putting more pressure on the you know, product like distributed GitLab, whatever you want to call it, distributed repos, something like that. You know, we've built a product on top of a distributed version management system. Maybe we can have distributed MRs.
I see.
Yeah, and it should be, I think the big thing with the issue I'm thinking of was that part of it was like, it wasn't necessarily that it couldn't be done. It was that, oh, if we change this, this will break existing users. So it's like, well, can't we just add a flag to check? Like, it was a really kind of, yeah, this is something we could probably do. But there was never any push to do it. And it just got put on the backlog for the product. But I don't know if there's a way we can engage and be like, no, we really want this. It would make our lives a lot easier. But even if we do have that, that's not going to fix the problem right now for us right now.
I think the problem also is that merge requests, branch pipelines are really unique to us because we're using mirroring, and this is not something that other people are going to find too useful, perhaps. Or I know that there were other people commenting on that issue outside of GitLab that said that it was a problem, but I don't know. Like, so then do we, just to move on, should we just say like we skip 2B for now and shelve it?
I had one question first. How are we doing that right now with Kubernetes workloads? Because we have a similar case there, right?
We don't do it. We run everything all the time.
Do it.
Okay.
And of course we could do that for Terraform too.
I mean, and then just cross notify on the ones that we detect a dirty plan on potentially.
Yeah. That's certainly an option. There's a small tax to pay for that, but it's maybe worth doing.
Especially if we're splitting.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, if we're splitting the Terraform up and we can make the Terraform runs more in parallel, running everything isn't as big of a deal because we can do more in parallel and they should be shorter. The problem is like the current, to do a full Terraform run across that entire repo for everything is like, that's 10, 15, 20 minutes or something crazy.
Why do you say that? Because right now we do use separate state files for all of the different environments, so they can all run in parallel.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's just more of a symptom of just how big some of our environments are rather than.
Yeah, I think it's a symptom of, I think the unfortunate thing would be like you make, I don't know, a benchmarking environment change, and now you have to wait for the production dry run, which has 1,000 resources in it, which is a pain.
But that you can skip that using DAG pipelines, like having the production pipeline only depend on production jobs, but like the other, for example, environment, for example, DNS only depend on DNS jobs with the needs keyword. And like GitLab CI now supports stageless pipeline, so you can just use the needs keyword and you just have a DAG there, and that's it. You don't have
But that-
any.
But that still doesn't help when you are running all pipelines for every single change on a branch. Right, you still have to wait
But we
until it
could-
completes
we
before you
could
merge.
still,
Yeah.
we could still, yeah. Well, if we have the changes detection or the rules thing on the gitlab.com side, and then don't have it on the ops side. So basically, we only do run all pipelines on ops, but we have the more granular thing on.
But do you
GitLab.
really, I mean, like ops is sort of the source of truth, and part of the, I thought that part of this would be not having secrets on .com. And, you know, it's not like a hard requirement, but
True, yeah.
I guess, I don't know. I didn't even consider running dry runs and applies on .com. I figure we wouldn't. We would just have that spinner like we have now for DB provisioning, which like waits for the mirror to complete. I would say, given this, like maybe we should shelve 2B for now. I mean, something we can go back to, and maybe say like 2A is in scope here, just to be prepared for when we move it on the .com side. And then 2C, Steve, like you're the closest to this, I think, because you did the recent JSONet move. Do you think this is something, you said it would be quick. Is this something that you'd be willing to work on, or are you like this?
Yeah, I can probably try work on it this week or next. Because the other jobs, the one for the environment, are already migrated to the rules. I did that part of the JSON generation, so there's only 5 jobs left, so I could try and do that fairly quickly. And the only index expect on those jobs are fairly simple to run only on pipelines for merge requests, so it should be a small change.
And then 2D is an ask from me because I'm using this approach for DB provisioning. I can just show you, if you haven't seen it, what it looks like. I like the approach because it's a lot cleaner than using the analytic graph approach. I just have a pipeline here, and we have a child pipeline that's generated for each environment. I click on the environment that generates a local child pipeline. And then from here, in the case of DB provisioning, we have database shards, but these are my Ansible plays, which are all allow failure, so they skip right to the Terraform stuff. And then the Terraform runs prepare, deploy, and optionally destroy. I was thinking something similar, but I guess the tricky thing about adding Ansible to our Terraform project is you need to run Terraform before, often you need to run Terraform before you run Ansible, but you don't necessarily want to block on Terraform before running Ansible, if that makes sense, right? Like you always want to run the prepare job to see what changes are pending, but I also may just want to run Ansible plays right away. And what I envision is that as we, for our VMs, we could add even like maintenance plays and other things here, you know, any kind of like operational task we could add and build this up over time. And having the child pipelines makes it a lot cleaner because if you were to use like DAG, I guess, like that's also a possibility, but this would soon get very, very crowded with like long columns of jobs. What do you guys think about this? And is this like something we may want to consider doing? I guess one difference here is also like the environment doesn't run until you hit the play button. And without, I don't know if you can use changes on child pipeline triggers. If you could, then maybe this could work for that as well. I just don't know.
Yeah, I looked at the documentation there, and it does support rules. So since it supports rules, I would expect it to support changes as well.
That would be nice.
I think, yeah, look, I mean, the dynamic pipeline stuff looks good to me. I mean, I may not be across all the issues and the problems. I'll freely admit that. I'm still part of me, and maybe this is just instinct, like, I don't know, maybe this is irrational, I guess is the word, is mixing Terraform and Ansible in the same repo. I'm still like, it is the reason we really want to do that, so you can get that full, just one end-to-end pipeline to say, create a server and then run Ansible on it. Like, is it's that real? We're trying to be able to do everything in one pipeline. Because to me, it's like they're totally two separate tools with different languages that need different linting and different like testing. Trying to put them in the
Yeah.
same repo.
I can give you an example.
Sure.
We're using GSM, Google Secrets Manager, for DB
Yep.
provisioning. And there are two things I need to do. One is to create secrets,
Yeah.
to bootstrap secrets with like, I create dummy values in Terraform. The second thing I need to do is to update my Ansible config so that these secrets are exposed as variables. I could do this in JSONet by just like having an array of secrets, which then generates the Terraform variable for like, these are the secrets I want for this environment. So I have like a, a JSONet config for every environment has like an array of secrets. Then when I do the make generate, that creates a variable for Terraform that has a list of secrets. And it also creates the Ansible config that exposes those secrets as variables. This is something that's like super nice, right? If I didn't have them in the same project, I'd have to have that JSON duplicated.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying. So it's that conceptually you're able to take something that you're doing in Terraform and like do it, pass it into Ansible without manually doing it in two places, essentially. Like you can just do the one thing.
Yeah, what's more, like I don't think like having two different tools necessitates two repositories, right? Like we have lots of cases where, look at GitLab.org, it's got Go, and GitLab or GitLab, it's got Go and Ruby and lots of other languages. And obviously Get is another example, if you want to use that.
Yeah, no, I'll freely admit, maybe it's as I said, it's just a outdated traditional feeling. That's certainly what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me.
I think there's also kind of two aspects to this. One of them is kind of the mono repo, like how do we organize the code? And the other one is the workflow side of things, right? And I mean, we could treat them as two separate discussions. I'm personally in favor of both of those being more unified. I mean, I'm generally a fan of mono repo, but I think if we put the mono repos thing to the side and just think about the workflow, it seems really powerful to me to be able to, on a higher level, have a pipeline that is not constrained to having just a single tool, right? So that we really get that end-to-end, like single pipeline that is able to provision everything. So I'm a fan of both of those, to be honest.
Yeah, look, yeah, fair point. As I said, I freely admit it was more just a gut reaction than anything actually sensible. Would we consider then, I don't want to muddy the waters with this now, but could we consider then the Kubernetes stuff potentially becoming part of that monolith in the future as well? Would there be value there in doing that? Because there's a lot of like bits we do in Terraform, and then we have to like match that into the Kubernetes piece.
I think all the arguments for having it in for having the other two together makes sense for Kubernetes as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I brought that up in point 8. I think it makes sense. Like, I don't know, the only worry I have is keeping our JSONet sanity, like keeping this sane, because if we have a lot of different ways of generating different types of config in JSONet, I think it could get hairy.
Agreed. But a mono repo.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say a mono repo should help. I agree. Like, we're all using JSONet now, which is great. We're using it a lot. And I think my worry is, especially using it I'm starting to use it on the Kubernetes side, is like, we're all doing it slightly differently. So, you know, unification into a repo, unification into the versions of tools we're using, and maybe even better like understanding, better, you know, yeah, unified way of using this, I'd be all for. So to me, that's definitely a positive if we bring it all in.
I just also to your point about like generating lots of stuff, I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, in our previous discussion, Jav, I was saying if you can have most of the Terraform still in TF, and then it's kind of like the deltas between environments are JSON, but not everything, then, you know, people who understand Terraform can go look in a file and see Terraform, and it's not just like reams and reams and reams of JSON. There's still like, you know, your Terraform, and the way we've done it with Horse is we have, you know, we've still got the Helm files that look like Helm files, but the values are generated, right? So it gives you, it's not just like all the YAML comes from JSON, which kind of gets a little bit overbearing sometimes. It's like the deltas between the environments are generated by JSON, not everything. And I think it makes it more manageable.
Just to clarify, Andrew, with Horse, I thought you were doing Helm, you were running Helm via Terraform, and just, so are you generating the Terraform that runs Helm, or are you changing that?
We are so we've got a Terraform resource, which is a Helm file.
Yep. Gotcha.
And the Helm file has
Helm file is because Helm file is
a Helm YAML.
A values file.
Helm, so we
Helm
so
release.
the values, and then the values file is generated by JSON, and so the values YAML file is generated, but the and
but then you're just pointing to some chart and then just say run Helm with this value
with
file.
these,
Gotcha.
and then the same with the you know, with the Terraform itself, we don't generate like the resources in JSON because I think that would get quite hairy quite quickly. We keep the resources as, and then we just use variables and counts to modify, to say, you know, this environment has got this resource, so we give it a count of 1, and then this environment doesn't have, and then you can eyeball like the Terraform very easily and see what the differences are. You know, it's not, but yeah.
So you are generating Terraform variables with JSON, right?
Yeah, we generate the TF auto vars JSON files, and then Terraform automatically picks those files up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I took that a step further, and I'm generating some resources with JSON too. But I think Andrew's right. It starts to get hairy, especially since looking at Terraform config as JSON is like you have to look at it sideways because you're not used to it. I don't like it that much. So yeah, I think Andrew's like, yeah, I think it's a good point to make. Like maybe we should just avoid that unless we absolutely need to.
At the risk of sidetracking this discussion, I'm going to really try not to. Does this problem also get easier? Like the more stuff we migrate to Kubernetes, right? Like our Terraform should get smaller, and perhaps part of the, not necessarily the problem, but we've got things like we're doing DNS entry management via Terraform and stuff. Does that stuff even make sense? Like, are we kind of doing too much with Terraform in some ways as well? Like that gitlab.com repo has got a lot of stuff. Like it's just part of this problem. So, maybe not right now, but could we just shed a lot of stuff even into separate Terraform repos that just don't need to be there?
So there's a similar argument with what we do in the runbooks repository, where we've got one bunch of scripts that update pingdom of all things. Then we've got another bunch of scripts that update Grafana dashboards. We've got another, and half of them are Bash, half of them are Go. You know, obviously then we've got the stuff that's generating the recording rules for the Prometheuses inside Kubernetes, and every single one of them is different. And I think that having all of that, and I know Igor suggested this in the past, so I don't want to, I think it's actually originally Igor's idea, but if we took all of that and put it into Terraform, it would be much less overhead. So I think almost having everything in Terraform rather than having 10 different ways of doing it would be better. And that might apply here as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have a strong opinion on this, except I think monorepo would be nice. I mean, like I'm feeling the pain of having recording rules done by runbooks, and I'm trying to create new environments that have, Prometheus in a Kubernetes cluster. And now what do I have to do? I have to okay, I have to apply the recording rules from runbooks. I'm thinking okay, maybe I'll just check out the runbooks project into my project. And but then it's it's terrible, right? So I think everyone here sounds like we're on the same page that monorepo is good, and we should try at least to make it work.
Would you ever include runbooks in that monorepo?
Yeah, I think so, right? At least not runbook is a misnomer, right? Recording rules,
remove all of the non-documentation stuff out of the runbooks repo. Yeah.
As soon as we stop cloning, so we do a clone into, I think Chef clones runbooks into the Prometheus servers, amongst other weird things. And if we can get rid of that, that would make all of that easier. So if I remember correctly, we cloned the project to get the rules, something weird like that.
Okay. Is there anything left that we haven't touched on that we should talk about before I come up with a plan? I think I think what I'll do is I'll come up with a plan that does 2A and 2C and 2D through F, which so basically everything except moving ops to .com. And Steve, I would love if you could pair with me on this if you have time, because you're close to it.
Yeah, I think I should have time right now. My priorities are the rollout for OS query to production, because there needs to be some movement there for compliance reasons and some tunnel stuff. But I can try and sync up with Ken on that and see what can be done. And feel free to ping me at any time, and I'll try to help out as much as possible.
And Andrew, we're already using JSONet tool for gitlab-com-infrastructure. Is there anything we can do to come up with some more standard conventions for how to use JSONet with CI? I want to, and maybe JSONet tool is the right place to document that. In other words, whether, I don't, there are a lot of different approaches when you're building a CI pipeline using JSONet, and I really would like to have one way to do it.
So one thing that we did as a hack, which I've actually I really like, is, and I think this is probably controversial, so feel free to disagree. But on the runbooks repository, where we check the YAML in, I've caught so many mistakes because I've run the Delta and I've seen, oh, I didn't expect that change. And I think that saved so many production outages, at least for myself, where I've gone, oh, gee, I didn't expect that. And your test suite would have to be massive to cover all of the things that you can spot by doing that. So that's the one thing, but then maybe, and this is also something I've been thinking about generally, maybe we should be building our own CI templates that we're including, so we could have one that does a check of the generate, right? And it kind of runs through all the files and makes sure that generate's done, and I don't know, a bunch of things like that. And we could include that in the JSON tool directory project, perhaps. Just an idea.
I'm very hesitant to do the dynamic generated pipeline using JSON. What has been your experience so far? I much prefer to do a make generate and see the changes.
Yeah, if there's I totally agree. For horse it made sense, but it's like the overhead in figuring out what's going to happen is really high. It's not something you want to do unless you absolutely have to. But also we can include other, we can generate a second YAML file, like you say, with make generate, and actually check that in. And then it just becomes so much easier to kind of understand what's going to happen when you push that to a GitLab server. I mean, the amount of time I spent while I was doing that, dealing with, especially with the DAG stuff and some of the error messages that you get with DAG, are super cryptic, like that needs a lot of work, and you're sitting there trying to figure out what the hell has gone wrong, and it's a nightmare. So I would definitely say if we can check that in, it would be better practice.
Yeah, I
What
think,
about?
I was
Go ahead,
gonna
Graham.
say, yeah, I was gonna say, I think also by even the whole make generate checking the source and the destination file with JSON, I found really useful as well for just, you can use, obviously we were talking about changes, but like CI changes keyword, you can do changes keyword to do things on that. Like you can do code owners, like you can make better code owners usage. You can do like, one thing I've learned over using GitLab is it works, all of the features work really well off files in Git, but not off like dynamic stuff running in CI jobs. Like if you can commit something to Git, GitLab functionality makes perfect sense. What file matches what environment, who owns it, whether it's a binary file, like all of this stuff works if you commit the output as well as the input. So we should try to be pushing for that as much as possible.
I agree. Like another thing to think about is JSON is really there to kind of help us be more productive as infrastructure engineers. And what we were doing before is we were checking in those config files and doing those as part of the MR. So, we're just kind of extending that and just help increasing our own productivity, but still checking that config in and getting the same benefits that we would have had if we were hand coding those files.
Java, are you also suggesting we need a style guide for JSON? Like
Yeah.
something, because that's a harder question, right? Like I don't know if like there's a linter or something that allows you to plug in a style guide kind of stuff.
The linter is terrible, and it basically it's not even like it basically I think it's running a different version of standard lib, so it tells you that stuff isn't there, and it'll get better, but it's
there's a JSON font as well, as far as I know. My film editor, I just downloaded the JSON plugin.
We do have that in Runbooks. Yeah, we run that on Runbooks. The one thing I would say is, so with the JSON tool, we started off with one subcommand called YAML, and now it's got a second one called render, I think. And that one kind of mandates that that all the JSON files are basically the multi-stream, the multi-file. And so it's got the file name that it's going to generate, and then the contents. And I think we should just standardize on that, because it gives you flexibility. And I think it's it's much easier to kind of, and in future we could even build tooling to kind of figure out dependencies and stuff like that, because the file has, the JSON file has got the output file in the declarator. And so it's I think we should just standardize on that JSON render.
Okay, so then I'm going to propose I'll take the infrastructure project template and update it to use JSON. There isn't much to the CI because it just uses Woodhouse for the mirroring and stuff like that, but update it to use JSON tool, establish where the JSON files are located. I know some people put them in .gitlab/CI, other people put them different places. Like I don't know where we want to put it, but we can use that project as like the base template and then follow it.
I wonder if we should just start thinking about project scaffold in the sense like do JSON tool in it, and it will create the makefile for you and the main.json it for you, just so like
I see.
You don't have to think or read where the best practices are. You just do like with Tanka, right? You do Tanka init and it just creates a scaffold for you. And like you already have that convention and you follow that convention blindly, right? So maybe we need to do something the same, like JSON to init, and it will create the makefile for you and a specific directory under the Git directory or wherever we want to do. And then you just extend that.
Does JSON tool require a makefile? Like, why can we just use JSON tool as the make, like, right?
Yeah. For the Terraform repo, I added the makefile because I'm a makefile, like I enjoy using the makefile, but it can be a bash script or it can be whatever script you want. But yeah, as long as we kind of have one way to do it and we don't think about it and do it in a reproducible way, I think that will create the convention out of laziness. If that makes sense.
I think that's a great idea. I just don't know whether we should do that now or like, it seems like it might be pretty simple to do, but maybe like, let's first figure out what we want the directory structure to look like. And and what is the best project to follow as? Like, should I use horse, Andrew, as, or horse is too complex for this? Like
So
what?
horse is using X dead cuddle now 10 cuddle, so it's
Yeah.
slightly different, but the render's the same. One idea that I had was that if we had something like some prefix .jsonnet on the files, so we had something dot, I don't know, output, it's a bad example, but I'll just use it, .output.jsonnet. Then we could have like a command which is basically go find all the files in all the subdirectories that are matching that and just render them. And then you almost don't need a make file because it's super simple. It's just like the same as go build ./... and it just does the thing. But I think if you had that on everything star.jsonnet, it would probably match too much stuff. So it'd have to be some, and then it just becomes really simple to use. And in future you can start doing clever things with dependencies and stuff. But
or like you mentioned Go, right? Just follow Go's convention with the main.go file and like even main.jsonnet and just do that as the endpoint.
Yes, we're actually doing that on, there's a branch that Cindy's been working on for the the get metrics catalogs, and they've got a single entry point exactly like that, and it just includes all the files that it needs. And then there's only one, and also the other thing is it speeds up the build because it only parses once. We'll probably start having memory problems at some point, but it definitely speeds it up.
That's what we ended up doing for the Terraform repo. We have a main.jsonnet file, and that ends up creating like 3 other YAML files.
That's
so I think,
a really good best practice.
Yeah, so I think having one entry point is also one of the good practices.
Okay, I think that's pretty much it, guys. I'm gonna create an epic for this that's gonna link to my project as a dependency for doing the staging infrastructure build out. It's gonna include the items I just talked about, and Steve, like maybe I'm hoping you can help with this too. And I'm hoping we can bang this out fairly quickly. I don't see anything major here, especially if we keep it on ops. So thanks everyone for spending the time this morning to talk, and I'll see you later. Thanks. Bye.